Stand by to stand by.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains. This is episode number 800 something. This is for the 13th day of March. This is the pre-show, and this is the time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. Slightly late tonight. This is 8:95. 8:95. We're 2 minutes away from airtime here. Typically, I'm about 12 minutes earlier than this, but this is the anniversary of a big storm here 30 years ago, and we had all these people wanted to talk out here, and so I'm tardy, and I apologize. But we are on the air everywhere for the pre-show. We've got 90 seconds for the pre-show, so if anybody needs to say anything obnoxious, this is your chance. Outrageous, obnoxious. Before the audio recorders are rolling, this is your big chance.
Was that storm Pampa, Texas?
The blizzard of 1993, the superstorm of the century. On this date 30 years ago, it was going up the East Coast and was ending where we are. It was one for the ages.
It was quite a weekend, I'll tell you that.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I'm originally from Montreal, Canada, and we had. Was that not the ice storm? No, that was 1998.
Mm-hmm. That's when y'all had the huge ice storm in Canada.
That was
and
the
New
big
England.
ice storm for us.
Yeah, we had 2 above zero. I got real smart because we lost power immediately that Friday night. And I thought, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to put all the stuff in the refrigerator in this, 30-inch pile of snow on top of my car. And so I put everything that was in the freezer out there in the snow. And I looked out there the next morning about 7 o'clock. There were like 3 dogs on top of my Pontiac Sunbird, like going through the toaster strudel and, ripping everything out of the little bags. And I was like, it's like the Yukon up here. So that was my worst story. We had to cook everything that was in the freezer that Saturday night on the grill. Just invited all the neighbors over and just had a cookout. So,
all right, so welcome to our television viewers. It is the top of the hour, and we're going to start the show in a second here. I guess we can start the show now. Goodness, are we all here? Is the gang all here?
As far as I know.
I feel like I didn't do something, but I'll figure it out when it doesn't happen. So there we go. Here comes Troy.
Did you hit the record button?
Well, no, not yet. That is almost happening here. So let's hit record track 1 and record track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is WeatherBrains, episode number 895. This is the longest running weather podcast in the universe. This is for the 13th of March, 2023, getting close to the Ides of March. And for a lot of us, when you think of the 13th of March, you think back of what happened on this date in 1993. And most people on this show are not even old enough to remember 1993, but boy, I am. And that was one for the ages. We had the superstorm of the century, blizzard of 93, whatever you call it. And those in the eastern third of the country dealt with it. Horrible tornado outbreak in Florida. We had 1 to 2 feet of snow down here in the deep south. Convective snow, hurricane force wind gust on the ridges, but we'll talk about that later. So let's see who's at Troy Kimmel. You just joined us. Troy, did you have any snow from the blizzard of 93 where you were 30 years ago?
No, but it was plenty chilly. I do remember that. In fact, I believe there was something National Weather Service, Austin, San Antonio actually put out today that on this date, Robert Miller Airport, which is our former airport, I think only got up to 45. So we were in the mid 40s here, sort of on the backside of the bomb cyclogenesis, which I hate, that occurred over the Gulf of Mexico with that system. It was far enough east of here and headed toward your way, James, and headed toward Florida and the Keys and everywhere else. Really got hit hard.
Yeah. We'll spend some time and talk about that in the weather roundup before the show is over. Neil, where were you in 1993 on March 13th?
I was down towards Vero Beach.
So you were in the warm sector of the storm.
Yeah, it was nothing but some wind, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, my home further north in the Carolinas got a bunch of snow and lots of high wind.
Yeah, and as I recall, there was a lot of tornado activity in Florida in the warm sector with some fatalities down there. That was a pretty rough ride. So are you in Florida tonight, Neil, or Washington?
No,
where?
I'm up in DC in the northern swamp.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, buddy. We live in interesting times, don't we? I mean, it's just
yeah, that's one way to put it.
Yeah, we live.
I have other ways to put it, which the FCC would come after us. Yes, even on the podcast, they'd come.
Yeah, no, and we are on television. Remember that. I always remind everybody that we are simulcasting on broadcast television here. So, Jen, we do live in interesting times. Now, you were not alive in 1993, but you should have lived through that. You would have a lot to write about it.
I was in college actually, so. I was at Penn State, and I'm trying to remember, I may have been on my spring break. So I was kind of in between State College and then Northeastern PA. So we got dumped on for sure with this one. So very momentous.
Yeah, it was a big one. Rick Smith, where were you in 1993 on the 13th of March?
1993, I was still at home in Memphis. So I think we were just kind of on the edges of this. I don't think we got very much there. It was cold, but I don't think we got hardly any snow, but just watching all the excitement from afar.
Yeah, it was something. Goodness. In fact, you know what? Here's what I need to do. Hang on. I need to put on the hat. So
oh yeah.
This is the Kevin Selly hat. If you go to YouTube now, I have to be careful because obviously the station where I was employed in 1993, I don't work there anymore. So I don't own any of the rights to any of their video. But on YouTube, if you go search Blizzard of 93, James Spann, Kevin Selly, you'll see Kevin wearing this hat in the middle of this, hurricane force wind gust. Visibility was near zero. It was horrific conditions. But when Kevin left us to go to Richmond, Virginia, I got out to my car, and this was sitting on the steering wheel. So he gifted me the Blizzard of 93 hat. And again, when I wear this thing, I look like Freddy Krueger. I mean, it's not a good look for me. I mean, for Kevin, it looked good, but
see that.
It's not a good look for me. But this is the hat that was worn in the Blizzard of 93. So let's go to Bill Murray. Bill is in the CIA control room or something. But Bill, what's going on here? What is this?
I just switched sides of the little office here, James, and went with my new camera. And it's not exactly new, but it's a different camera. And so just kind of switch sides because it's a little easier for me to see all the screens.
Now, something you got a microphone here, you got lights, you got this big globe. I mean, you've changed things up here. This is a new set.
All that time recuperating from the appendicitis.
That's what I was going to ask, how things are going without the appendix.
Yeah, give us a health update.
Going much better, I tell you what. Got the drain. The drain was the bad thing. Once the doctor ripped that out last Thursday, it's been all downhill, or I guess all uphill since then. One of the two. I still can't somebody ran over our mailbox, and I don't get it. It wasn't a big fancy mailbox, but I couldn't go out there and use the post hole digger and dig a new mailbox thing and all that sort of stuff, because I'm not supposed to pick up anything bigger than like a bag of sugar or something for the next week.
Could you manage to maybe stay out of the hospital for a few more days? I mean,
I'm going to try. I tell you what, the funniest thing was telling them that Thursday night, hey, we got severe weather tomorrow and I got to work it. So you either got to let me go home tonight, or you got to keep me till about 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And
I'd love to have been a fly on the wall on that one.
So they voted to keep me in the hospital, and most of the folks, almost everybody in charge, came by the room that morning to see what was going on. So.
Well, Bill, bring in our guest before he hangs up on us, please.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's made it this long. But tonight's guest, WeatherBrain, wrote and directed the new movie Supercell, which will be in theaters, on digital, and on demand this Thursday, March 17th. From his IMDb profile, he completed his MFA and BA from USC Film School in 2011, which I know is a big thing. One semester into his master's program, he was awarded the Thomas B. Bush Memorial Scholarship for Excellence in Cinematography and Directing. He became one of the youngest folks to ever direct, edit, and produce an NBC primetime drama show, Siberia. In 2015, he created Swipe Market, a creative agency focused on bringing entertainment to Silicon Valley. He has directed and produced over 200 campaigns for brands including HP Enterprise and Intel. Aside from screenwriting and directing commercials, he contributes his passions to the Alzheimer's Association in efforts to raise awareness for research and funding. Herbert James Winterstern, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Thank you for having me. You guys can call me Jamie.
And I tended to do that, but I thought that sounded awfully impressive there. The Herbert.
My parents named me Herbert, so I think they thought it was impressive too. But going through my elementary and middle school and high school years, Jamie was the preference.
That's awesome. Well, we've got Dr. Kim Coco McLean, who's joined us just a minute late tonight, and it looks like she has a doll in her arms. I mean, literally, and it almost figuratively looks like a doll.
It is a doll.
Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. She is a doll. She's just so sweet, and she appreciates the time change that just happened, and she's celebrating it by
staying up an extra hour, huh?
yeah. She hasn't really sprung forward or something, but she is just going to hang out with us and be a good little munchkin, and she might have some thoughts to share. You know, if she has any good questions, I'll be sure to let you guys know.
We're going to be looking forward to that, Kim. I'm glad you got to bring the baby along. That's awesome. So Jamie, you hung out here through a bunch of weather nerddom. Were you a weather nerd at all coming up, or is this sort of a recent development?
Well, you know, I will tell you what I was doing in 1993. I was 8 years old. And my one memory was the Montreal Canadiens winning the Stanley Cup that year. But I do recall, I think it was National Geographic put out a VHS tape called Storm of the Century. And I remember watching that a million times. Of course, we ended up getting our big ice storm in 1998. But I've been a big weather nut since I can remember. Being from Montreal, we were snowbirds. We go to Florida quite often. And I would just, watch the sky for thunderstorms. And I would always have myself a camcorder or some sort of tape recording device and try and film lightning strikes. And then I would create mixtapes called Summer Thunderstorms or March Thunderstorms, 96, 97. And back then it wasn't like it is today. I would tape to tape edit my lightning strikes and just watch them during the winter time, hoping to get back to South Florida to watch more thunderstorms.
Yeah, things have changed a lot in the last 20 years, haven't they? With the advent of streaming and the internet and everything that we have at our fingertips. So how did you get into film? Obviously, it sounds like a little bit of the Steven Spielberg thing there with you growing up, already getting into all that sort of stuff. It seems like that's a pedigree most directors kind of share. Is that early adoption of all those technologies?
I would probably say my father had a big influence on me because he would stay up after my bedtime, after my mother put me to sleep, and I would always hear something coming from the basement. And after she went to bed, I would go and sneak downstairs and watch movies that he was watching. And of course, I might have been 8, 9, 10 years old, and he would have the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston, or a movie that was probably far beyond my years, but I would watch movies with him. And I don't know, I guess I was always an artist growing up. My creative side was always sparking, whereas the other analytical side of my brain, when it comes to numbers, wasn't as strong. And I guess I took to filming, and my mother, she would film a lot of home videos of our family. Eventually, I would take that camcorder and make my own videos. So yeah, it was an early adoption into the whole, I guess, medium of filmmaking. And I never had, I was very fortunate that I've always kind of wanted to do this, and now I find myself doing it.
It just seems like that's another trait shared by a lot of creative folks, actors and actresses and directors, screenwriters and folks. They knew from an early age unequivocally that this is what they wanted to do. I was listening to one of the podcasts with Jessica Chastain last night. And she said that from the beginning. She didn't do well in school because it wasn't suited for what she wanted to do. But she knew as soon as she found out that it was a profession, that this is what she was going to do for the rest of her life. And that seems to be a trait that a lot of you share.
It's not the easiest thing to do, but I guess I can't control. I just feel like the need, I have to do it. And, it's Supercell. For the last 4 years, it's been Supercell. That's when the butt of the idea entered my head. The next 4 years, it'll be something else. And yeah, it's something that I can't control. It's a need to do it. It's a passion.
Well, that's pretty cool, because these things don't happen overnight. I mean, they take years for fruition. Talk about how COVID affected it, if any at all, or was it kind of the parts that would be affected by COVID already sort of past the pandemic when you got to
No, well, I would say that, after college, the thing is a lot of when you grow up, everyone really wants to be a director. And, they don't understand it's a very difficult profession. You kind of have to be leading, all the different departments and seeing a concept, an idea from development through delivery that could span years, maybe decades. And it's very difficult. And, I didn't start necessarily with directing in terms of my profession. I started more as an editor. I learned how to edit use the editing software to cut things together. And that's how I started making money. And then that led to directing opportunities, which was the NBC series that I ended up directing. I would say COVID was kind of a big benefit. It was terrible pandemic, but it was a benefit where it kind of it slowed everyone down. And, when you're kind of isolated and nimble, and, I used that time to write the screenplay. Everything kind of stopped, but I kind of sped up during that time of COVID. So in a way, it benefited me in the film, because it's a true story. We had finished the screenplay. I forget when exactly it was. It might've been 2021. And Twister, the sequel, was announced. And my heart just sunk, because I knew, listen, everyone remembers Twister, and everyone's definitely going to see the sequel, the official sequel to Twister. And this storm chasing movie was it was special to me, because for me, the reason why I did it was there hadn't been anything like Twister. And this was a story about the storm chasing community. And I thought, well, what a privilege I could bring that to today's audiences. The kids today, they may have not even seen that movie from 1996. And then, of course, they announced it. But the truth is, because of COVID, that movie got so delayed that we, as an independent film, were able to get Supercell made. And now it's going to be released on Friday. So to me, COVID was, it benefited us. We used it to our benefit, even though it was not easy making a COVID movie. There's a lot of constraints. We have, wearing masks and getting tested and all that stuff. It's very hard to communicate. But yeah, that's the story about that, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. It seems like a lot of creative things happened during the pandemic. A lot of good movies this year. One of my favorite Oscars ceremonies last night. We pride ourselves every year on watching as many of the of the Oscar nominated films as we can. And I just enjoyed it. I love that they got all the awards back in the show. I know the folks at the TV station, like at James's station that was carrying it last night, probably weren't too happy that it went as long as it did. I think it was probably a good hour over time, but I'm glad they honored everybody and gave it what it was due, because, to me, the Oscars is sort of, you get out of it what you put into it. And when you've invested a lot of time in watching hours and hours of movies over the last, 6 months or so, you want to celebrate that. It's sort of the culmination of all that. Any takeaways from the Oscars last night, Jamie, for you from a professional, that were, things that you were glad to see, anything that you were kind of taken aback by?
I mean, other than just being a fan of film, I mean, I was so impressed with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I remember when I saw that film, it blew me away. I'd never seen anything like it. So I wasn't surprised that they kind of swept. I remember seeing The Whale, and I was so impressed with what Brandon Fraser did. So I was super proud of him. I just as a fan of movies, it's just something that you tune into. Trust me, my dream one day is to walk on that stage and accept an Oscar. I mean, it's kind of like winning a national championship for a sports team. So, maybe one day.
Yeah, we got some news tonight for our basketball fans that are also fans of the show. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get finished talking to you, because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Do you ever see yourself up on the stage like a basketball coach, like Jim Valvano used to make his team practice cutting down the nets at the beginning of the season so they would be ready when March and the championship game came?
Honestly, I think it's nice to be recognized, absolutely, but the passion of wanting to tell something that's intimate, that's personal, and make as many people be able to put it in front of as many people as you can. That's kind of the goal. All the other accolade stuff, if that comes, that's great. But for me, I'm just excited to be able to direct, produce something that millions of people can enjoy forever. I mean, once you make a movie, it's out there and it doesn't go away. And that's the exciting thing for me.
I was so excited to hear the backstory of Ke Huy Quan, the Vietnamese actor who, as a child, starred, come from an immigrant family, got a chance to be in Raiders of the Lost Ark with Harrison Ford, and in Goonies, and then hardly worked again, and almost got out of the industry. Did what you and a lot of great film folks did, went back to school to learn to work behind the scenes. So it was really emotional to see him win last night and to watch his emotional acceptance speech from the stage.
Oh yeah, no, that was kind of probably the highlight of the whole Oscars last night, was him winning. And yeah, I remember his performances from his early days. And I didn't know this. He is a USC alum. I think he's graduating class of 1999. So that was pretty cool that we share that. And I couldn't imagine how it feels, but it was exciting, watching him hug Harrison and also, shake Brendan Fraser's hand. I believe he was also in Encino Man, which was
I
an
heard
early
them say that. I didn't know that
classic.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a beautiful thing to come full circle and be able, the journey is, I think it's a Kobe Bryant quote, or I remember, people asked him, how does it feel to be so amazing and to win all those accolades? And it's not really the destination. It's waking up at 4 a.m., putting in the reps, same thing with Tiger Woods and whatnot. It's the process is what's needed to be great. Everyone focuses on the accolades and the statistics, but it's a nonstop thing that you have to put in every day. And I think that's an important lesson for anybody who wants to achieve greatness in what they do.
Did Steven Spielberg go to USC or to UCLA? I can't remember. And you probably know, Jen.
Well, he got rejected from USC. I believe he ended up going to Long Beach. But the famous story is that he applied to USC and he got rejected. USC is very difficult. It took me 3 times to get into the production program personally. And it's funny because he ended up donating a lot of money to USC, and now they have a building with his name on it. So,
so Jamie, what did you think about The Fabelmans? Of course, it didn't win any awards last night, but it was a very sentimental story.
For me, I'm a little biased. He's obviously one of my idols. I've seen every single Steven Spielberg movie. Listen, it's interesting because it's an autobiographical film. It was fun seeing him do something intimate. For the last 10, 15 years, he's made these very big films. West Side Story was a big musical. Bridge of Spies, The Post. My favorite Spielberg films are the early Spielberg films, the ones that had to do with children and coming of age. E.T. and Jurassic Park, and for me to see him just delivers so much emotion with a family and the look, just in and around the house. It showed you, for me, it showed you how much of a master director he is to make that as entertaining as it was. Because, today, unless you're, you have a cape on or you're a superhero, it's very hard to convince anyone to give you any money. But for him to be able to tell his autobiography, I thought was really special. And, it is just so beautiful of a film.
Was it John Huston that he was assigned to, that he went to talk to in the movie, the famous director? Is that right, or do I have that name
Yes.
wrong? But
No,
I
it's
thought,
John.
do you remember what he told him in the movie about how to shoot a shot to have it be dramatic? And then that actually played into the show last night, where they, had the old camera up there and talked about, shooting up for dramatic effect. I guess those tenets never change, do they?
No, they don't. A fun fact, David Lynch, who's a well-known director, played the part of John Huston, which it took me a minute to realize that. But I mean, that's such a fun scene. That ending scene of that film was unbelievable. Yeah, no, I mean, it really is. It's a visual medium. Things like the horizon line, right? As he puts it, make sure it's high or low, because if it's in the middle, it's boring as shit. I mean, I mean, these are things that stay with us. Spielberg famously, he would watch David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia every week. He almost gave up because he was so impressed. He thought the bar was way too high for him. And he learned there's just so much going on. There's obviously the plot of a story, you track the characters, but then there's the subtext, the themes, being able to, motifs, things that are not spoken, that are kind of, you get to enjoy on a second, a third, a fourth watch. And he just, he picked up on that. And of course, that's what makes the job so fun.
Well, I know, of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once swept so many categories, but I had predicted that All's Quiet on the Western Front would do very well award-wise, and it did, sweeping a lot of the technical categories. That movie was extremely impressive to me. Any other ones stand out for you or any other of the panelists this year as favorites?
Tar for me was one of the most impressive movies of the year. I remember watching that in the theaters, and it grew on me after I saw it. It's a slow moving film, but it stuck with me, and it's such a masterpiece. It's such a saga, of her life. I thought that was probably one of the more impressive movies from last year.
And I like that story. And I thought about you when I heard the backstory that, she was booked like 3 years out in advance, but that screenplay was so special that, when they sent it to her, they moved her schedule around to make sure that movie got done. The screenplay sold it so strongly. And so I think probably any screenplay writer probably, dreams of getting to that level where you can turn something in that a major star like Cate Blanchett will take on a moment's notice and go ahead and produce.
The stars make films. I mean, the power of a star, you get a star attached, you get the funding. So, the dream is, when you write something, usually the first step is to find a star to attach to it. And once you get that, it kind of is a snowball effect, and things happen really fast. Absolutely.
Well, you did well here because you got Alec Baldwin and Heche, obviously, two big stars. Was that a beginning thing, an early in the process thing? What made them join your cast?
Well, it's funny. I'm trying to remember when, but the script was finished, and through some of the producer relationships, Dennis Quaid was a name that came up. And initially, the concept was that Dennis Quaid would play Roy. And we had thought that he was going to sign on to the project for about 5 to 6 months. So, and if you think about it that way, I mean, that's just it would have been a different film, but that's how it started. And then he ended up passing on the project. I think he was filming Reagan at the time, if you guys recall. That film was shot in Oklahoma. And then just, I guess, through an opportunity, again, through the producers, they were able to get it in front of Alec Baldwin. And this would be for the Zane role. And he signed on. And I remember it was around my birthday, just over 2 years ago. It was around February 15th. They had told me that Alec signed on, and I had to pinch myself. And of course, as soon as Alec Baldwin signs on, we were in pre-production less than 2 months. So that just jump-started the whole process. Of course, it's a waiting game for years, right? You have the script and you want to get it made, and you might have a little money attached to as a carrot for someone. And, you send it to an agent, and you're waiting for, maybe the agent hasn't even sent it to their client. So you don't know, and you're waiting. But as soon as someone says yes, everything happens so fast. It's surreal. And, I was pretty nervous. It's my first film, Alec Baldwin starring in it. It was a lot to handle, but, we ended up making it happen.
I wanted to ask, I guess, maybe a little bit about that process. I'm curious about how I don't understand the financial process. I don't know if you call the folks that bankroll these things investors or whatever, but how do you go after money? And when you're writing the screenplay, how much background research are you doing in advance? And I guess in parallel to sort of the investor pitch, or whatever you refer to them as, are you talking to like the weather nerds out there? And is this like, was there surprise with this sort of underground base of weather nerds? Are they really adrenaline junkies? And does that get excited? Get people excited? I'm interested to know, like, what's the pull? Like, what about this fear aspect of tornadoes has people so freaked out that they just can't turn away?
I think action adventure is a popular genre. I think investors like genres that are bankable like that. Obviously the whole adrenaline rush of tornado chasing fits into that category, even though for me, it's more of the dramatic side of things, the family side. I was very close with a big portion of the storm chasing community, and I couldn't have made the film without the storm chasing community. They were involved from the very beginning. In fact, the reason why this whole thing existed was I first went storm chasing in 2019, and I was looking up tour companies to go storm chasing with. And I saw Tempest Tours, and it's not the cheapest thing. I don't know if you know, but let's call it $3,000 to go on a chase tour. I remember calling them and finding, I was trying to find a way for them to basically say, give me just a little advice on how to not get killed, because I can't afford to go on your tour, but I kind of am still going to go. But is there anything you can tell me? And Kim George, who's the director at the company, I think she handles all the customer relations. She said, well, if you're flying into Arlington, Texas, go meet my husband, Steve. He's a geologist, and he could, give you a crash course on how to storm chase. And I was with my fiance, and we spent 2 hours with this man. He's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet. And that was the seed. He showed me the NAM nest, the HER. He got me radar scope on my phone. He told me tomorrow at 3:30 p.m., you got to be in Ozona. And I think there was like a little blip on the HER that showed there was something happening there. The next day, call it beginner's luck. It was probably the most photogenic supercells of the year. We went exactly to Ozona, Iran, Texas. And I just remember seeing it for the first time, and it was way bigger than anything I saw in Florida. And it's funny because I had my camera with me, and I was just photographing it during the daytime. And then at night we went to the backside, and I got the lightning, the frequent lightning that you get with the backside. I didn't know any of this. And that's footage I ended up using in the movie as background plates for the storms. But from there on out, we got very close with Tempest Tours, which is Martin Licious's company. And, I started reaching out to people like Dr. Lee Orff, Pecos Hank. He's a big YouTuber. He is unbelievable. He was a collaborator. He supplied almost his entire library of footage for this movie. I'm forgetting names, but Skip Talbot is another chaser. For me, the important thing was to try and make this as real as I could, to make it as authentic. And there was parameters to doing that because I didn't have Twister $100+ million studio budget just to throw at a CGI company. I couldn't afford to make it that. So out of necessity, using real footage and very minimal VFX techniques, we were able to execute what we did. But I guess going on a tangent to come back to what you're saying about financing, tornado film is a lucrative concept to I guess financiers, but what they didn't intend for is what I care about, because it's all spectacle, sure, but for me it's all about the characters, it's all about the family and the themes. Because if you care about the people you watch, everything else is just bonus, it's extra.
That's a fascinating point. One of the things that I feel like, I guess I'm kind of like on the inside of this. So I always wonder what like people in Hollywood or who aren't like in this community think about this community and how real it is, like the aftermath of these events and encountering fatalities and completely obliterated houses where there's nothing left but a foundation. Like that to me is the real aspect that I kind of wonder, like when you're putting together a movie, like how do you sort of, thread that needle of showing how real it is, but conveying the message that this is not something to mess with and not something you want to glamorize.
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, that's ultimately, I think, the theme of the film is, do we chase for knowledge or do we chase for thrills? And I think that's something that a lot of storm chasers contend with, like Reed Timmer, for instance, there's nobody as popular, I guess, in the space as him, screaming and giving that entertainment factor. But I also know that he's involved with some scientific measures. I saw him, I guess, shooting rockets into the funnels. I would say the outside perspective is people don't know, they see, they freak out. Tornadoes, yeah, they understand the impact of what weather can do. The concept of people paying money to go chasing and making it a Disney experience, that's something that's completely surreal to them. And that's why I wanted to write this screenplay, because that's something I hadn't seen before. And when I saw the convergence and the 10,000 cars in traffic jams and the Disney experience that I guess a Tempest Tours or a Silver Linings, that to me was novel. And I think people don't know that. And that's why Supercell to me existed.
What do you think? It'd be interesting to see like how many kids out there who see this, this and down the road would be like the future turning point where they said, you know what, I want to study meteorology. I want to go into weather. I mean, weather up until I think a lot of this stuff started to show up on social media and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, a lot of people ended up in meteorology just because, they didn't want to do engineering or physics or something else. And it was kind of interesting. And most people can point to some major weather event in their childhood, but when you talk to people out there and they see stuff like that, do you think that this is going to generate a lot of interest in the potential future weather community?
Well, it's funny because 1996 Twister did just that, right? Back then, who was chasing storms other than specific scientists trying to get their probes in front to get data and to forecast. And now what I saw is a product of what Twister did. What I can do now, for me, and maybe it's more of a film mission, because that's my I did my best to become avid at storm chasing and understanding the science of forecasting, and but that's not my profession, right? So what for me, I look at an audience and I see what they're getting and what they're not getting. What I got in the 80s and 90s was movies about real people, people that I could look up to, that were either paleontologists or they were firefighters or they were astronauts, right? You think of like movies like Backdraft and Apollo 13. I don't see those films anymore. I see movies about superheroes. And what I wanted to provide with Supercell was I want people to look at storm chasers heroically. And I get goosebumps thinking, because if anyone watches Supercell and by product of watching it, they want to get in the field of meteorology, I think that's a beautiful thing. And I did my job.
Jamie, we got a chance to watch the movie. I got a chance to watch it yesterday, and I know Kim kind of mentioned this in some messages back and forth, but I think you really did a good job, even more so than Twister. I think you really did a good job capturing what it feels like to be a chaser, kind of the culture of chasing, kind of the sitting around in a shady gas station parking lot. The quote in the movie about chasing being 90% driving, extremely accurate. I thought you did a really, really good job capturing that and kind of the community. So kudos to you for that. And I went back through the credits this afternoon because I was just curious. I knew you had to have some really good people on board with you here. Not that you couldn't do it yourself, but I mean, clearly you had people like Martin Licious and Chris Gullickson and Skip Talbot, and kind of talk about, what do storm chasers do, like in a technical advisor role on a movie like this? I know you said you went chasing, you got to experience that, but talk about what you got from them that you were able to work into the movie that made it feel more real as far as chasing goes.
I think that obviously educating myself for one was a big thing, which started with Tempest and Martin and whatnot. And then, eventually, you meet one person, they say, you got to meet this guy. And that leads to meeting more people. Val and Amy Castor were huge in this. They actually chaperoned us on some second unit chasing where I was able to get the Brody Storm Tours van, in the real stuff, although it wasn't the greatest severe weather week, unfortunately. But I would say for me to get it, just to educate myself in terms of the writing, is this what people say? The terminology, you got to be careful because there is a term that's called inside baseball. And for me to make the film for what could be 2% of an audience, because the storm chasing community is very specific, it's very niche. Most people are going to watch it, have no idea what the NAM nest, what the HUR is, what CAPE values are. But if I can get that right, then I feel like I did something. Once we filmed it, and the other thing too was it was fun to, I don't want to actually spoil it, but there are some storm chasers that make cameos in the film. That was important to me. But then in post-production, trying to realize the experience, the subjective experience of being in a van or being in the bear's cage. What footage could I use to comp into the frame? And that's where Hank comes in, and he's got decades experience chasing and filming these things. It was a learning curve to find out, for him, what was a good shot. For him, what a good shot was different than what I needed as a good shot. I needed a locked off, stable tripod shot without windshield wipers, because the VFX artists need a clean pull, because you can't have this beautiful wide shot and then you have this big black thing going like this. It's a lot of learning curves. But the movie was a product of having all of the help from the chasing community. They all banded with me, understanding that this story hasn't been told since 1996, and it was due. And I think that's why I was lucky enough to get as much contribution as I did from the community.
You kind of touched on this, but I'm guessing when you're making a movie, I don't know. I was watching this movie as a meteorologist. I was watching it as somebody that used to go storm chasing before I got the job I have now. I was watching it as much as I could as just a person. I'm guessing you're writing and you're shooting, you're aiming for just the average person. But in the back of your mind, are you thinking about, well, I better get this right because the meteorologists are going to come after me or the chasers are going to come after me? That's in your head somewhere, right?
Absolutely. That was a voice in the back of my head every moment I had a screen on. And it wasn't just to get the software right, because I was able to partner with the College of DuPage, right, to get that software, radar scope, National Weather Service, the SPC, NOAA. I was able to get that, which was huge. It's like making a film about the NBA and not being able to use the NBA logo. You don't want that. So I was fortunate to get all that for this. And of course, when you cut to radar scope, well, what do you see? I want to see a couplet because sure, maybe like 99% of the audience don't know what they're looking at and it's not going to affect their experience. But if you're a storm chaser and you're looking at that radar and you know that that couplet is right by that GPS pin, that will impact you. And that was always important to me to get right.
Very cool. I'm gonna let some other people talk, but I got to ask you. You talked about Steven Spielberg earlier. Some of the notes I took at the beginning of the movie, and we don't want to get into spoilers, but there's a couple of shots that really reminded me of Steven Spielberg, and I just wonder if any of this was intentional. And even if it wasn't, just nod and say yes to make me feel better. But no, there's a scene where there's a kid looking out, like there's a kid looking out the door or window or something. It really reminded me so much of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And then there was even a shot with somebody riding a bike with a bicycle on it. And I immediately thought of E.T. I had no idea about your background, but I don't know. Maybe I do that with movies sometimes, but I don't know if any of that was intentional, but if it wasn't, it should have been.
Well, I will say that, Spielberg was a huge influence, as my favorite director, as I looked up to making films, I would say there's a lot of homage to him and his filmmaking. And it's something that I just, technically speaking, and also in terms of emotional impact, I just want to see more of that. And if I could take some of that I've, learned from his craft and apply to my own, then I'm excited because, as I said, I'm thinking about the 13-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, the 19-year-olds that are going to watch this that might not have seen any of that. And just very similar to how Spielberg probably took some out of Hitchcock's book or David Lean's book. It's obviously flattery to look at your the older guard and pass some of that knowledge through your craft. So I really appreciate you noticing those because that was very much intended.
So there are so many things to talk about, and I guess we're not doing spoilers, things that are too spoilery here. So I won't get into some of the funny details. I will say that you really did do a good job conveying sort of that feel of what it's like to be a chaser in the community. And one of my favorite scenes, there's a scene in a cafe that's sort of like this middle of nowhere kind of place. And there's an experienced chaser who doesn't even have to look at the menu. This, tells the other guy, like, put your menu down, I'm ordering for you, you're getting this. Like, and the waitress leans over and asks them, how bad's it gonna get? And like that whole exchange, that whole way of being in that restaurant in the middle of nowhere, like it is such a part of chase life. You sort of live in so many different places when you're out doing a whole chase excursion, and you make your home in those places, and you just know every little nook and cranny place for thousands of miles, sometimes square. It's really amazing how you captured that. That part, I just was like, oh my gosh, I've been here. I have been in this moment. So very well done. I do have to ask, Alec Baldwin's character, is he supposed to be like an angry Chuck Doswell, or was there a particular inspiration? I just as I watched him more, I just thought maybe I don't know, but I can ask.
There is some inspiration, and I don't want to. I don't feel the need to name names, but there were some inspirations with Zane Rogers in kind of his showman ability to try and at all costs give the most close encounter experience, no matter how dangerous. But yeah, there's some real life inspiration there, but I don't feel comfortable sharing that.
All right. Well, that I can certainly understand. Have we talked? I apologize that I missed a little bit of time in there. You guys were so good at talking scientific, whatever, and movie things that it put my baby right to sleep. So I went off and I came back. But I missed if we discussed the very clear homage to a specific event that this was. And I see some nods. So if this was covered somewhat, I did want to just ask you, it is the 10-year anniversary of an event that may or may not have been very much featured in this movie. Were you trying to do this as sort of in remembrance? There was a lot wrapped up in that event for the Chase community and for the people here in Central Oklahoma. So just
absolutely
what the background was.
Well, I'll say that, I wasn't obviously planning for this to come out on the 10-year anniversary of El Reno. But I will say, Tim Samaras, studying him, very heroic figure. And there was a lot of inspiration from that man in this. It was obviously a tragedy that happened everyone knows that storm, of how big and fast that thing grew and the weird movement it took, where they've done a lot of analysis on. I think Skip Talbot does a fantastic analysis, because there's the old saying where all you have to do is escape to the south and east, and under these circumstances the rules changed. But I think him not necessarily having an academic background and being kind of somewhat of a renegade, but there was what he did in terms of his engineering mind, because there is that history of him and the science community. But I think there was a lot of inspiration from that man's life that I definitely wanted to share. Not directly, of course. I didn't want to make a complete direct reference, but I think that, again, kids watching this film, being able to look up to these men and women, Tim Samaras, and remembering him and thinking, of the heroism of what people have to do to move science forecasting forward in order to save other lives, that was important to me.
Bill, you're talking, but we can't hear you.
This is called dead air in the radio business. Yes. But we're thankful we have a marvelous editor that will chop this out of the audio version.
Well, I couldn't understand why Kim just talked all over me a minute ago. I was just talking away something to her, and she just started talking right in the middle of my sentence. So now I feel better.
Jamie, hey, Bill, I think your mic is different now. It sounds like you have the mic under your armpit.
And I don't. My other mic has disappeared, so I can't use it now. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know what has happened to it, but if it reappears in my list here, I will.
It's back. It's just back. It came back. Whatever happened.
Seems to be short in the little cable. Is that okay, James?
Yes.
Now I can't hear you though, so let me go back to my AirPods for the speaker. All right, Jamie, I'll try again at the risk of hopefully getting it through this time. I couldn't help but notice the Dave Hoadley storm track illustrations. Was that something someone told you about, or did you look back through old editions or issues of Storm Track, which is, back in the 90s, that was our holy grail, that publication.
So this all, I attended 2 TESA conferences between, and I don't know if you're familiar with the TESA conference, but
Oh yeah.
I remember this was when I was writing the film. They handed out free Storm Trek magazines, or like the original issues, maybe there were copies. And I thought they were so fascinating. I was like, I have to put this in. And, obviously the illustrations that come in them, again, for me, what makes films timeless are things that are like tactile, tangible, right? And that goes into like illustrations and things you can put on the walls and whatnot. So when I learned about David Hoadley, and this is a funny story, I had to get his illustrations in the film. So I think it was through Martin and Tempest, because they commissioned him to do an illustration for Tempest for, I think, an anniversary. I reached out to David, and the man still chases. And I was like, sir, can I please, use your illustrations in the film? And he was, he's like, look, I'll send you original copies, and all you have to do is pay the postage stamp for me to send you these illustrations. And he gave me so much. And I just, I put it all over the walls and of course that poster that William stares at before deciding to run away from home. Absolutely. These are the details that are exciting to me, because you guys know this, maybe most people, oh, that looks cool. But whenever I could pay homage to anyone in the storm chasing community, I took advantage of that. I thought it was fun to nod at David Hoadley for that.
And Jen, you got to meet Dave Hoadley, didn't you, at one of your recent conferences you were at?
I did. Yeah, he was actually, I met him twice at the Mid-Atlantic Chaser Con. He comes there and he fascinating. He spoke at the first one, and just fascinating. I could hear him talk about chasing all day. I mean, it's just awesome.
Well, I mean, he was doing it in a pure time, before the internet, and it was amazing.
I heard that he chased.
accomplished.
I heard he chased on horseback. Is that correct?
I wouldn't put it past him.
Show title.
Jamie and Heche, of course, passed away so heartbreakingly. Talk about that shift. How did that affect the movie, the production? How does that change things? And Jen, I think you want to chime in on that, and then I think Kim's going to follow with a question.
That was very rough, because we developed a huge friendship on the film and after the movie. The one thing that was special about Anne was she connected with my mother's story, because I lost my mom to Alzheimer's in 2020, and that losing a parent was a big theme of the movie, of course, and she connected with that. And I know she's a mother of 2 boys, so I think she did an unbelievable job pulling the essence, I think, of my mom. And in a way, I was able to see my mom through her takes, through her performance. My mom was able to relive. And then, of course, it's, I guess, what was one of my fondest memories, I think, is I remember going over to her place, and her son Atlas was there. And I was so excited to show the first 7 minutes of the movie. And she was so excited with the prologue, and both of them were very excited. And I was I couldn't wait to show the whole film. And then, of course, I think it was less than a month later she passed, so she never got a chance to watch the movie. But it's just surreal to lose her, of course. And then, yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Not that it necessarily impacted the film. She it was one of her final performances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to follow up to is the fact that she was no stranger to disaster movies. Actually, she was in the movie Volcano, and recently she was in the movie 13 Minutes, and she played one of the main characters in that one as well. So Jamie, if you have any just other thoughts of what it was like to work with her. I mean, she's got a huge you know, resume of movies. Just, you know, just kind of your parting thoughts of what it was like to work with her.
You know, she was so fascinated with science. I mean, she had like her brain was just wired. She loved the science aspect of the film. She got a kick out of it. I think for me, I guess the best thing with Anne is that she is such a prolific actress and so experienced. You know, she would be talking about, I don't know, you know, buying a house in Thomasville, Georgia, which was, you know, where we were shooting half the film. And it was a real emotional scene. And she would just be hysterical talking about like very, you know, I don't know, something else. And I would call action and she would just turn a switch on and she would deliver like just very deep, impactful performance. And then I would yell cut and she'd go back and have this conversation with somebody. And it was just so real to see somebody have that ability to turn it on. You know, listen, acting could be one of the most difficult things to do. I don't envy acting, you know, as a director. It's very difficult to put yourself out there when there's a camera right here and just be somebody else. But just her ability to turn it on in the moment. I would say also whether you were a PA or, you know, a director, it didn't matter. She was very approachable woman. It didn't matter if you wanted her picture on the street, she would just laugh and take a photograph with you, treat you like you were her best friend. So she was a good one, definitely a good one.
I can imagine, as hard as it is to know what to say with your lead actress, one of, if not your lead actor, Alec Baldwin, also some difficult, who knows what to say about that too. And you know, you've been in a really interesting situation here with both of your leads. What were your thoughts or what went on behind the scenes when all of that happened? Did that affect your thought process, the movie?
I mean, it is crazy to think that, you know, of course, that terrible situation with Alec and then followed by with what happened with Anne. I mean, honestly, I had to keep my head down. I have to make the film. I have to deliver the movie. It's out of my control. It's, you know, extremely unfortunate in both situations. You know, I can't really say anything else about it, but, you know, I just tried to focus on delivering the film to my best ability. You know, the both of those terrible incidents, you know, occurred after filming our film. So there was no real impact with the making of the film, but it is unfortunate. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I figured it would be another situation of I don't know what to say. I mean, what an interesting, it's like you had the disaster film and then later on top of it are different disasters on top of the disaster film. So it's like this very meta disaster, which I think we can all appreciate. We all live in that every day. So I have to say, I'm a geographer by training, and I love just situating myself in, you know, movie and following along where things are. And there were a couple times in this movie where I think I was a little bit thrown. And one of them was that you were clearly displacing the El Reno event and trying to put it in Texas while using the coverage of Gary England with Lacey behind him, you know, like talking about Kingfisher County and like, oh, but we're in Texas. And my husband was sitting there just like, that's not in Texas.
Okay.
Well, then there's an I-90 sign, so I realized we were filming in Montana.
Yeah.
I couldn't get everything right.
No. There are times where you really, really tried. So like so not to be a spoiler here, but this is, there was a situation where there are two storms and, you know, there's like sort of these training supercells or something going on that they're chasing. And the geographic references to like the placement of the core and what they would be experiencing as one moves off and then they're getting cored by the other and everything else was like exactly correct. Like it was, and you know, I was just like, you know, but I have to say, you went to McCook, Nebraska, and you didn't take us through the Teapots Cafe. Like, it's the thing to see in McCook, Nebraska. Big oversight of all the geographic stuff. I mean, I-90 sign, whatever. The missing teapots, I was disappointed, sir. I was disappointed.
But you got the Dorothy statue in Liberal, Kansas.
Which I did love. Okay, we're forgiven for all things. Just for going to Liberal, Kansas, I was like, oh, we're going to Liberal. Okay, even though we somehow went from the Oklahoma Panhandle into Texas to get there, you went there. So I applauded all of the places you went. They were very, very good choices. But it has to be hard when you're filming this and putting it all together. I mean, was that a difficulty trying to stitch together like a sensible geography for moving through the plains from place to place? Because I mean, even when we're chasing, it can be nonsense seeming.
It was impossible. I mean, if this film was made in a different way, I would have multiple storm chase seasons where the actors would donate all of their time. We'd have the real storms. We go to the actual locations. But you have to remember, this whole movie was shot in 20 days. And I had 10 days I had to shoot in Georgia for interiors. And that was for tax reasons, because that's how some of the financing works with this. You get tax back for doing, spending money and putting up jobs in the state. So we had to shoot half the movie in Georgia. And then I got the other half in Billings, Montana, which was my plains. I, in addition to that, went back out to try and pick up the pieces with the van and hit, everywhere I could. Now, the thing is, I could only go where the storms were. There were no storms in McCook, Nebraska. I couldn't get those. You said, I'm not familiar with the teapots. Is that so? Yeah, I think you're going to show me something.
I'm going to send you something to look at, what you missed by not going there, but you'll see.
Yeah, but it was impossible. And trust me, I know everything you're bringing up. I know. And again, we were not supposed to have 400 VFX shots in this film, and to replace the 10 freeway sign was not a priority when you had a whole sky to replace with a tornado. So I had to choose my battles. Absolutely. Yeah.
Jamie, I'm going to talk about things you did right and things that made it feel like a chaser experience. I got to say, one of the things that hit me was the stuck in the mud sequence, because I have lived that and almost that exact thing where we're watching a supercell with a tornado warning and we're stuck in the mud and then the storm overtakes us. And that was a little triggering, but you did a good job with that, because I felt that getting out and trying to push yourself out of the mud and having to ride out that storm. So I don't know. I'm thinking of other things, but that was certainly another moment for me that when I used to chase, that was one of the experiences I will never forget and never want to do again. So you nailed that one.
Thank you. I just want to let Kim know I'm looking at this link. It's the Fuller Family Restaurant. That's unbelievable. I wish I shot there.
Yep, and I'm so sorry. All the chase community, I can hear them screaming, "It's not teapots, it's cookie jars!" And you're right, it's cookie jars. But it is absolutely not to be missed if you're ever in McCook, Nebraska.
Well, listen, you don't get this anywhere in the world. You go to the smallest towns in these states and you see these places, and of course you write in there. Like, one of my favorite places is Sterling City, the 1900 Hotel. I stayed there. And the people that work the desk, the family, they're unbelievable, wonderful people. I wanted them in the film. And then you end up shooting it, and then it's a whole different beast, right? You got to shoot in these places. So it's very hard. I would say if there was one film that successfully did a good job, I don't know if you guys saw No Man Land, but I believe the director, Chloe Zhao, she actually was able to film in the Midwest and actually travel with the caravan and shoot it very naturalistically. In a whole other universe, that would have been awesome to do. But yeah, trust me, being in Billings and trying to find those really Americana specific motels or cafes, it was a huge battle, and it was killing me inside because I've been to all these places, Matador, Texas, or throughout Kansas, Oklahoma, Panhandle. So I know the pain, and trust me, I try to get as much as I could in the film.
All right, Jamie. So I've not seen the film. I'm one of these strange guys. I still work 4 a.m. to midnight. I will see it. I promise. I will pay to see it when it comes out. But I have to ask, did you make television meteorologists look like morons or imbeciles in this movie?
I think I did a good job.
That. Did not.
Well, listen, I think the one representative was Gary England. So, I mean, who better than that, right? To focus on her feature.
Okay, so because if you look at all the movies, and if even in Twister, the TV weather people, it wasn't a good look for them. You go back to the movie Anchorman, Brick Tamland, he basically said that people call him mentally retarded. So I'm just saying, TV weather people have never done well with these movies. So. I want to talk about the nuts and bolts, and this is kind of an odd direction to go in, but the business side of this. This is not 1996. When Twister came out in 1996, it was a different world. We were on CompuServe and Prodigy and had 300 baud dial-up modems, and now everything has changed. My business has changed. The concept of these Ron Burgundy newscasts, it's not going to last much longer. Linear television is dead. Everything is different. Now, I would assume that it's a different business model in the film business now. How do you distribute and monetize this? Will you do a theatrical run, and then does it go to some streaming platform like, Netflix or Apple TV or something? To kind of explain how that whole thing works, the monetization and the distribution of a film these days. I have no idea.
It's a little sad. The communal experience of going to a movie theater, it's not as prevalent as it was when I was a kid, and I'm sure everyone remembers. And that's something that we're just trying to maintain. That's why there's movies like Empire of Light or The Fabelmans or even Babylon. It's trying to bring that Hollywood experience back. And it's completely changed now. And then theatrical is not even something that's really monetized anymore. The sad thing with this film, which is the reality, is this film is only going to play on 10 screens. And I would have loved it to be, 1,000 screens over the course of months. But, the truth is that, streaming is really now where people devour content and they don't want to leave their home. So, the marketers and the business side of it is, what's the easiest way we can get as many people to watch a movie? And it's on Hulu or Netflix or Apple TV. And I hope that doesn't evaporate the whole theater experience. I really hope it doesn't, because you can't exchange that. And if there's any independent film, remember this is an indie film with a very micro budget comparative to a Twister. This was built for the big screen. And I would, anyone who can make it out to those 10 screens, I would say please do, because the sound and the size of the movie, it really should be experienced in a movie theater. The business has changed, and I hope we can maintain the theater experience at all costs.
So when you say 10 screens, is that literally 10 screens? And where are the 10 screens?
So there are 10 cities and 10 screens. If you go to supercellmovie.com, you'll see the listed screens. They kind of focused on the big markets. I'm excited to say that on the 17th, I will be at the Dallas screening. It's at the Colony, which is the Galaxy Grandscape Theater in North Dallas, March 17th at 7:30 p.m. I'll attend it. I'll present the film, and I'll do a Q&A. Pecos Hank is attending and will join me. And a lot of the storm chasing community is coming out to that screening. I would say to see if the movie's playing in a theater near you, I would go to supercellmovie.com.
And so when will it be available on some streaming platform? And do we know that yet?
It's the same day. It'll be available for purchase or rental on demand. So if you go on your device, whether it's Apple TV or your Amazon Fire Stick, and you look up Supercell, you'll be able to find it. And again, I think supercellmovie.com has, Redbox, iTunes, has the different ways you can purchase the film on Friday.
So I guess the monetization model, it's individuals actually buying or renting the film to watch at home, right?
It's very transactional. Yeah, I mean, there's the box office still exists for the big tentpole movies, right? The studio movies, but when it comes to indie films, it's very transactional, and it's all via streamers. And usually the first window is a pay window where you go and buy the film. And I think after 90 days, it will be exclusively on either Netflix or Hulu or Apple Plus. I'm not sure who's going to take the movie then, but that's kind of how the business model works.
Okay. Well, I'll be buying your movie when I can. So, but and again, I forecast the weather. I really don't watch television. It's as strange as it is. I've worked in these TV stations for 44 years. I don't watch television. But I go to Apple TV and I want to buy the movie. What app are you going to use? Do you go to Apple TV Plus, or do you go to how does that work? I mean, for those like me that are trying to figure it out.
You Google it, James, and you sit down at your television and figure out which source you're going to use.
Okay,
for that one.
I'll figure it out.
You've heard of iTunes, right? You've heard of iTunes.
He's an Apple guy, James. Yeah.
Well, no, I know. I mean, it's just like, I mean, we have my wife uses Apple TV when she watches television, and maybe there's an iTunes and Apple TV app. I will dig into it at some point when I have a few minutes.
Well, just get the neighborhood 12-year-old to come over and help you. But, we've all got so many streaming devices now on our televisions, Roku, because I really wanted to see the movie Living Friday night with Bill Nighy, and, his performance, the trailers intrigued me, and we couldn't find it anywhere. I had heard early on in the program, that the movie was not going to release to streaming prior to the Oscars. And so, we sat down Friday night and I said, I really want to see this movie, so I'm going to give it one last chance. I Googled it, and lo and behold, it's available for rent on Apple. And I had to do exactly what you're talking about, James. I had to think for a second. If I need to get Apple from this computer to that television, how am I going to do it? Well, thank God there's something through the Roku stick called AirPlay. And we watched that movie, and to me it was one of the most rewarding movies of the year. If you get a chance to see it, it's spectacular. It's certainly worth the rental too. Now I tell you what, you're going to have a chaser convergence at this premiere Friday night in Dallas, Jamie. I think all the weather folks that didn't already know about it are going to be showing up now.
Perfect. Well, there's still tickets available, so we'll see. We'll see if we can sell out.
Well, that would be cool. Jamie, do you listen to any podcasts? I'm always interested in some of our influential people that we have. We've been doing this one for 17 years before we even really realized what it was. But now they're pretty popular. I love the show Smartless. Is one of my favorites. Are there any that you watch that are inspiring or listen to that you're inspired by?
I usually the ones that I'm listening to have to do with film. I know Film School is a popular one amongst us filmmakers.
I think that's the one I found last night and really liked it.
And also I think it's called Serial, but that was the one that had this unsolved mystery thing going where they went through kind of unsolved cases step by step. I think they featured a making a murderer on that one. One of the big Netflix series came from their podcast, so that's always that's a good listen. But not so much though. I'm not a huge podcaster myself.
Can we infer that Alec Baldwin was a weather person? It sounds like Anne Heche maybe was, but can we infer that Alec had some interest in the weather for him to take on this film?
He did his research. I remember in his, I guess, BTS interview, he did quote Tim Samaras, and he also Reed Timmer. He would call them the two Tims. That was, his focus was on those two guys. But he, listen, it's part, I guess, part of the job is to really learn about the profession. If you're going to portray it, you want to get the mannerisms right and get, everything kind of cooking. So it's believable. So yeah, absolutely. I think he absolutely did his research.
Well, I think something you said earlier resonated with me. I caught it as it came by. You talked about putting yourself out there when you make a film. And I think that was mentioned last night from the stage. I want to say it was Daniel Kwan who said, he talked to his mom. And even though he was a very shy, introverted person, she always, celebrated his activities. And he said, when he talked to her yesterday before the awards, she told him there can be a lot of brave people in that room with you. And, that automatically made him one of those brave people. So I think we all do admire what you do and appreciate that, because it is a very, very brave thing. Does that resonate anything with you in your own life?
I appreciate that. Being an artist, the thing is, it's difficult. Film really is a bridge between business and art, right? And as the director and the writer, it is an art for me. And sometimes, a lot of people, they'll punch in 9-to-5 jobs and their personal lives are kind of private. With me as a filmmaker, it's a 24/7 deal, and my heart and soul goes into my daily work. And eventually the world, you guys watch it, and whether you like it or not, it's me putting myself out there. So it's not the easiest thing, but like I said, I guess at the beginning of the session, it's something I have to do. I wouldn't know what else to do if not make movies.
So how easy was it to lead these powerful actors like Alec Baldwin and Anne Heche and the other great ensemble cast that was there? Were there any crazy things that happened? Any inside baseball stories you can tell us?
Well, I will say, it was my first film, and more or less, it kind of was like film school. To be in the presence of somebody with their careers, decades of experience, Alec Baldwin, Anne Heche, Skeet Ulrich, I learned a lot. And the thing I always say, and every director says it, I know Ron Howard famously says, is directing's 90% casting. You cast correctly, then you get to let those people do their jobs and you kind of observe them. So for me, it was, of course, my first day on set with Alec was intimidating. Who wouldn't it be for any director, on their first film? But I think I grew confidence every day I showed up at set. And I would say by the last day I was working with Alec or anyone, I was commanding the room much more than I guess I was on the first few days. And that was all through experience and survival of being able to get through the process.
All right, Bill, you wrapped up?
I think so. I've asked so many questions. I've loved this show, Jamie. It's been an honor to meet you and a lot of fun to, connect the creative genius to the movie that we got to screen. I want to thank Mia Green and all the folks that helped hook us up. Jen, thank you for making this happen. And I've loved every minute of it. So thank you for giving us lots and lots of your time tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Jamie, plug one more time the way people can get involved, watch the movie, anything you need to plug. You got every weather dweeb in the country watching this, so go.
Perfect. So if you live in the Dallas metro area, it's important. There's only so many tickets left, but please, at 7:30 p.m. at the Colony, it's the Galaxy Grandscape Theater, 7:30 p.m. I will be in attendance. I will present the film. We're going to have Tempest Tours there. We're going to have Pecos Hank Shima is going to be there. And we're going to have a Q&A after the movie. So it's a very special experience in Dallas on Friday. So please buy your tickets. For any other information about the release on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, you can visit supercellmovie.com. It will show all the ways you can watch and stream and attend a local movie theater near you.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for your time. You stayed for more than an hour, but this is great interview segment. So thank you so much, and hope it all works out well. I can't wait to see it myself. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jamie.
sir.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Bye, Jamie.
You know, we're going to have to change Pecos Hank's name to Hollywood Hank after
Yeah.
this. All right. So let's pause here. We're going to bring in Tony Rice and the Astronomy Report. We'll come back with Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We'll do some email this week. Somebody sent a note. I think Jen sent a note. Somebody wanted the weather roundup back, and I have been very guilty of ignoring that. So we'll do a weather roundup. I'll play the Weather Ball song, and we'll do picks of the week and a whole lot more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
This past weekend, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences handed out about 50 gold Oscar statuettes, as they've done for the past 93 years. But did you know that the Oscars are plated using a technology originally developed for NASA? When gold plating was needed for a mirror on the laser altimeter on board the Mars orbiter back in the 90s, NASA turned to longtime partner Epner Technology, a Brooklyn-based family business that's been gold plating everything from jewelry to components of the GO satellite fleet. Epner developed an electroplating process that deposits tightly packed atoms of pure gold to ensure the hardness that's needed to make these last over long-term missions, while maintaining the reflectivity that's important to mirrors. You see, gold's pretty important in space. The 21-foot-tall primary mirror of the James Webb Space Telescope is plated in gold because of its reflective properties, particularly in the infrared spectrum. But at a thickness of less than 1/1000th of a human hair, there's not a whole lot of gold there. The Oscar statues presented on Sunday night total have about 3.5 times as much as was used on the Webb telescope. The Academy turned to Epner in 2016 to solve a decades-old problem of winners returning their Oscars after the gold had flaked off. The company now plates all the Oscars with the same process developed for space and offers a lifetime guarantee, which, according to company president David Epner, it's something we're never going to have to make good on. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, March of 1990 was extremely active with a total of 86 tornadoes occurring. 78 of them were from March the 11th through March the 15th, and the most active day, March 13th. 59 tornadoes moved through parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, and Iowa. There were 2 F4s and 2 F5s. For the storm data publication for March of 1990, the Heston thunderstorm complex produced at least 4 tornadoes, traveling nearly 120 miles over a 3.5-hour period. The first tornado touched down in Reno County, traveling into Harvey County and intensifying into an F5 while hitting the town of Heston. It began to weaken in far southeastern McPherson County. And then the second tornado formed in Harvey County, north of the Heston area. It traveled parallel to the first tornado for nearly 2 miles and then merged with it. This led to a rapidly intensifying tornado, another F5, and it reached that intensity near Gossel. The storm data publication also listed some unusual aspects of the mid-March tornadoes. The outbreak on the 13th produced the strongest tornadoes of record at that time, so early in the season, for so far northwest in the U.S. The state of Kansas reported tornadoes on 4 consecutive days, the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, very early in the season to be seeing this. A violent tornadic thunderstorm in York County, Nebraska killed 10,000 geese. Approximately 8 miles southwest of Heston, Kansas, a quarter-mile section of fence was rolled up into a big ball in a tree row. Also in the Heston area, several tons of powdered cement were sucked out of a bin. We have several summaries revolving around this big event at tornadotalk.com.
Okay, just maybe we've got a little email in the email inbox. Let's see what Jen's got going on tonight.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right. So the first one is from James Lewis, and the second one is from James Lewis because we missed last week. So James, thank you so much for writing to us. But the first one is he's calling it a Kim question because that's what we like to call it. But he says, we know, or at least people who've seen the show know, that the survival rate for tornadoes in a site-built home is over 99%, even in strong tornadoes. However, whenever this statistic comes up, I'm always left with a question. Does this stat vary significantly for certain demographics? Is there any group where the survival rate in a strong tornado in a site-built home is below 99%? I ask this because tornado fatalities seem to skew older, and I do wonder if the survival rate for certain age groups is significantly lower or higher, although I guess it can't be that much higher.
I wish I could say that I had very deep knowledge on how that bears out. I mean, we do have a slightly there's a little bit of overrepresentation of the older population, so it skews, a little bit older. The fatality statistics do, and there is there's some research. I'll point you to, if you really want to dig, Tyler Fricker. Look up his work, and he gets more into just ordinary tornadoes, so not just the big tornadoes where it's hard to see a differentiation among demographics, because who perishes in those tends to get a little bit more just attached to the structure. For the demographics to make that kind of a difference, like when you look at mobility issues, you might have to go to slightly lower end tornadoes to really start to see the fullness of that bear out. He does analyses that showcase some of that, but to my knowledge, there's a little bit of that for older populations in particular, standing out of the data.
Thank you, Kim. All right, the second question is, and he goes, I hate to double email, but we're going to let you do it anyway. But for the anniversary of the 1993 blizzard, I had a question. When storm surge is brought up, it's usually in relation to hurricanes. But the 1993 storm may be the most notorious example of how extratropical cyclones can also produce major storm surge. The question I have is whether forecasting storm surge for an extratropical cyclone is significantly different from forecasting it for a hurricane. Dr. Neal, do you want to roll?
Yeah, it is. It's not significantly different. In fact, it's the same set of code. It really just depends on the fetch and the wind stress. Those are the two input variables. And in fact, a lot of the storm surge from some of these nor'easters can be worse because the fetch is so much greater. That's a little bit of a trade-off from the intensity of what you see with an eye wall wrapping around. But the algorithms, the code, doesn't matter. You can run it anywhere. In fact, my pick of the week will tell you where to get the code and run it yourself.
Ooh, very cool. Thank you so much, Dr. Neal. And James, thank you for these great questions. And please, folks, send us your questions and show, I don't know, whatever. I've all of a sudden, I've lost my brain.
Suggestions, Jim.
Thank you, Bill. Suggestions at email@weatherbrains.com. And check out our newsletter too, because that comes out every Thursday morning. You can sign up for that on our website, and some great stuff. Great articles and history from our friend Bill every week. It's awesome stuff. And so I'm going to throw it back to Bill now.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun writing that history stuff. And I mentioned the storm of the century, and our friend Daryl Hirschman weighed in on it. And he said, that actually that name was used during the event.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the first reference to the storm of the century was by the Weather Service in Chicago, who said, in one of their forecast discussions that the East was dealing with the storm of the century. And so the name stuck. And Rick, I thought we were remiss. We probably could have saved Jamie about $500,000 in FCC fines, because I think we noticed that there may have been some EAS signals in the movie. So maybe you need to reach out to him privately and save him some big bucks.
Just don't let him show it on broadcast TV. He'll be okay.
I know some big fines have been handed out in that area. It's that part of the show each week where that we look forward to when we get to talk to Bruce Jones from Midland Radio. Midland is, of course, one of the leading manufacturers of weather radios. They're definitely the leader in that market, and Bruce is the national spokesperson, the world spokesperson for this incredibly valuable life-saving tool. Bruce, I see you're at home tonight. We've been talking to a filmmaker who's made a cool film about chasing on the planes, and we've enjoyed talking to him from a lot of different angles. But, one important thing you hear on a lot of those, almost every chase video you see, every chaser stream, what are they listening to in the background? They're listening to NOAA Weather Radio. It's kind of fun to listen to their broadcasts as they travel along. We're getting into the heart of storm season here, Bruce. It's going to be heating up over the next 2 months. what you want to bring us tonight to help us be better equipped emissaries of this valuable product.
Well, thanks, Bill. First of all, I'll apologize if there's any glitch in my audio or video. I'm on a borrowed computer tonight. Mine's in the shop, so I hope the audio and video is okay. If it is, give me a thumbs up, and if it's not, give me a thumbs down. It's okay. All right, thank you. Well, you're right, Bill. Every time we go into another tornado season in the United States, the spring tornado season, I'm always a little bit worried that we'll have one of these situations where someone doesn't get a warning, even though the warning was issued well before the tornado struck. And for those of you who listen to WeatherBrains or you watch WeatherBrains, emissary is a good word to use. We're all emissaries for the Weather Ready Nation message. And that is, we all have to work together and do our part to make this a weather ready nation. So, have a plan for what you're going to do at your home if you do have severe weather coming. Identify a safe room in the middle of your home on the first floor or in the basement, and maybe underneath a large piece of furniture in the basement or underneath the stairwell. But have a plan. And most importantly, have a plan for how you're going to receive these warnings. And it's important that you have more than one way to receive them. So if you listen to this broadcast, this podcast, or if you enjoy it on video and you watch it, please spread the message to your friends and your family of the importance of having a NOAA weather radio. Once you get one of these radios, the service is free. It's completely free. This broadcast is brought to you by the National Weather Service, and they run this network of more than 1,000 transmitters nationwide on the air 24 hours a day, just monitoring for severe weather. And if there's severe weather in your county, your weather radio is going to notify you of that immediately. And the notifications come direct from the National Weather Service. We have a special deal for you if you're a fan of WeatherBrains. There's a promo code that you can use to get 25% off of a weather radio. First of all, go to midlandusa.com. That's midlandusa.com. And when you go to order your weather radio, use the promo code SPANN25. That's SPANN25. SPANN25 is the promo code at midlandusa.com. When you use that promo code, you get 25% off a weather radio. So you can buy a weather radio for you. You can buy one for your family, one for your friends, one for your boss. It's that time of year, severe weather season. Tornado season is coming. It's already hit in some areas of the Southeast. We've already seen a dramatic severe weather activity. Severe weather in California going on right now with all the flooding. So use the promo code SPAN25. That's SPANN25 at midlandusa.com, and you get 25% off of a weather radio that'll either protect you or protect someone you love. It is tornado season in the most tornado-prone area of the entire planet, the good old USA. So please go to midlandusa.com, use this promo code, get yourself or your friends or family a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
And again, Bruce, a cell phone can fail. Anything can fail, but I've seen it over and over and over where in a true tornado emergency, that fancy phone that you rely on for warnings becomes a brick, where I think people need to understand this. Weather radio has nothing to do with cellular service. This is an independent, reliable RF network, and it's darn good.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for standing behind it, James, because your voice adds a lot of credibility to the NOAA Weather Radio Network. And I know I speak to folks at National Weather Service all the time who sing your praises for helping to spread this message. Thank you very much.
Right. We just got to do a better job of getting weather radios into homes and businesses. It's stunning to me how many don't have one in very, very tornado-prone parts of the United States. So maybe you, as a birthday gift or an Easter gift or something, you can give somebody that you know or love a weather radio for the season. And again, you got that promo code and you get the discount. So that's a good thing. So Bruce, hang tight here. We got to play the weather ball. We haven't played this in a long time.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, Colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
So we're doing the show on the 13th of March. And again, where we are, and for a lot of folks up and down the East Coast, they're remembering the blizzard of 93, storm of the century, whatever you call it. That was for the east areas north and east of where I am, it was in progress. It was winding down here on that day, but it was a whopper. But and we got another one up in the Northeast. Neil, you're the closest guy we have to this nor'easter. Are you up with the New England situation?
It's winding up. I mean, I think it's going to put down some pretty wet snow up in the New England area, but I'm just kind of waiting for the north swell to wrap around the back end, and then I might disappear for a couple days.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
And I was looking at some of the numbers. It'll be a big snowstorm for interior parts of New England. It's going to be a pretty big one, and they could see some power outages and all kind of issues up there. But kind of watching the satellite view here in front of me, watching this thing get cranked up. So it'll be fun to watch that the next couple of days. Jen, how you doing on this cold air?
I am not a fan. I'm ready to get on the other side of it, but no, we've had just the upper level disturbances. We're not having any impacts from the coastal storm this far west, but we are getting these little disturbances through and had some flurries and snow showers today. I just could not get warm today. So I was all bundled up covered up in my blankies all day while I was working, but not too shabby. We'll be back in the 50s by about Thursday, I think.
Yeah, we've got a freeze warning down here in the deep south for tonight and tomorrow night. And inevitably, we're going to have another set of freezes Sunday and Monday, late this weekend and next week as these shots of cold air get down in here, which is not unusual. Everybody wants to go plant their, daffodils or whatever, tomatoes, weed, whatever people are growing. And I say the same thing every year. Wait until April 15th. If you're down here along Interstate 20, wait until April 15th, tax day. You're going to get burned. That cold snap's going to bite you big time. Anyway, and by the way, we should mention that James Adelot is he's on Christmas vacation, or he's going to Wally World. Does anybody know where James A is right now?
But we're not sure that his family didn't kill him in his sleep last night.
Yeah. Clark W. Griswold. Now James Adelot. We've never seen these guys in the same room. So he is on vacation somewhere in the western half of the United States, and that's all we know. So hopefully he comes back intact next week. But we, of course, have our two Oklahoma correspondents. Rick, what's happening in OKC weather-wise this week?
Well, we're in that late winter, early spring pattern where we're just going up and down, back and forth with frequent cold front passages. So we'll be 75 or 80, and then it'll be, today we didn't get out of the 40s. We had some light snow flurries in the Oklahoma City metro and other parts of the state. And everybody acts like it's some, very unusual thing. It it happens every year about this time, and that's going to be the trend for the rest of the week. We do have a severe weather risk for a good chunk of eastern Oklahoma on Thursday. That doesn't look to be a big deal, but you can never say that for sure. But we're just in that, the teases for spring. People see the warm weather and it's 80 degrees and you want to get out and, like you said, James, plant stuff, and then reality hits again. Yep.
So Kim, what's the tornado season looking like in the Great Plains?
My team and I did take a look at the CFS just to get a sense for.
I know you're looking. I know you're looking at this, and you're looking at the INSO. We've gone INSO neutral. That's official now. So what does it all mean for the chasers in the plains this year?
I mean, man, for whatever it's worth, it shows just nothing but a sea of blue, which I know excites Neil, but not really the chasing community. I will say though that it didn't pick up the Norman tornado day, even the day of. So these indices, you have to take them with that sort of light grain of salt. So while you might not get these sort of classic supercellular days coming up, that doesn't mean that we're precluded from the stuff you guys love, the racing sheer low top supercell stuff screaming at 70 miles an hour as the battle of the air masses goes on. So we might see stuff. It probably wouldn't be chaseable, but man, I would really appreciate it if we just could forego the monster hail part of the early spring season like that. If I could just keep my roof every year that I can keep the roof is a great year, because we have just lost way too many in Norman in recent years. And we've already had a tornado hit us this year. Like, Norman's had enough. We're good. We're good. We don't need it.
Yeah, you can only take so much excitement for 1 year. I totally understand where you're coming from. Hey, Neil, with this INSO neutral thing, what are your thoughts on a hurricane season?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be above average. I mean, usually if you were looking at like an El Nino, it would sort of put a damper on the Atlantic side just because of the enhanced shear. But with a neutral signal and potentially, I'd have to check the AMO. I mean, if the AMO's on the warm side, and last year really wasn't all that active, there could be some pin-up energy.
Yep, we'll see. Troy Kimmel, what does it mean for you in Austin, all of this?
Hopefully it gets us some rain down here, this with this shifting pattern. But and if you look at what's really been frustrating down here lately is we seem to have a lot of rain out there at 5, 6, and 7 days. It just never gets here. We're getting close to the event, and everything goes to the north, and pops Kim and pops Rick and everybody else to the north, and goes to the east as well, Mississippi and parts of Tennessee. But we just don't see much around here, and we need more rainfall. Hopefully, beautiful day today. We had lots of sunshine around Austin. Got out and did a little yard work. They did the last work on clearing some of the trees out back today, so that was good news, and got out and did that. Looks like we warm up midweek, and as Rick pointed out, got changing weather, and then some of the coolest we've seen in a little bit. We get into Friday and into the weekend, first part of next week.
Good deals. So that's what's happening across the fruited plain here. Let's do picks of the week. This is going to be something weather related.
What about me, Dr. Span? You left me out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bill, do you want to comment on the weather down here in the deep south?
I thought it was interesting. We had a marginal severe weather event yesterday, but had one spin up that the Weather Service in Birmingham was totally on top of. Severe thunderstorm warning on it. Started to develop a couplet, and then they put a tornado possible tag on it. But that was a severe thunderstorm warning, that was actionable, that you needed. All severe thunderstorm warnings are actionable. And, you would have easily gotten that warning from, NOAA Weather Radio, and an F0 tornado that was capable of, dropping a tree on a house or a car, and could have been a tragedy. Touchdown briefly southeast of Alexander City in Tallapoosa County. And, that's just another tornado to add to the, to the litany of them that we've already had this year in Alabama. And unfortunately, it's probably not the last one. So I thought that was interesting. James, for all of our basketball fans out there, I need the breaking news jingle real quick.
Oh boy. This is going to be controversial here, but hang on.
Controversial.
Well, I just, whenever you start talking about college sports, it's all one big controversy. So,
this is the national pastime. This is like
nothing about this.
More popular than baseball now. I think there's like 65 million
program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Go.
Well, I have received approval from the board of directors here at WeatherBrains to offer all of our audience to join us in the NCAA Tournament Bracket Challenge. Some of the panelists have already put their brackets up. And in the show notes tonight that JP puts up on the website, weatherbrains.com, we'll have a link. And when you go there and follow that link, you will need the password show title. No spaces, no underscores, no capitals, just show title. That 9-letter password will get you in, and see if you can beat the likes of James Spann and James Adelot and other panelists that are putting their brackets up this week. It's going to be an exciting NCAA basketball tournament. I'm especially excited about it this year because we get the first round back in Birmingham, and that's my favorite day in sports. That Thursday or Friday, for us it's Thursday this year, where we have 4 basketball games, and we're going to have the likes of Iowa and Auburn and Maryland and West Virginia and Alabama and Houston here. And it's going to be fun. And I know Kim Cloco McLean wants to weigh in on her Purdue Boilermakers. They got a good chance to go a long way in this tournament, Kim.
Yeah, it's the general consensus of Purdue fans that they're either going to lose immediately or they're going to make it to the Final Four. And it's really going to be nothing in between. So we're all very excited to see what happens, but Purdue is going to Purdue one way or the other. we're just really excited to see them in it. And it's been a really fun team to watch this year. So
yeah, Zach Edey is quite a basketball player, that's for sure. And it's a wide open tournament. So I know a lot of fans are going to be watching with interest. But James, I don't think that'll be too controversial, hopefully.
No, no controversy involved there. That's good. So Basketball Brains is wide open, and come join the group. All right.
Movie brains, basketball brains. It's been
it's been and you name it, we've got it. All right. So picks of the week. Let's get, real quickly. Mine. One of the reporters here, I thought, did a really good job of looking back on the blizzard of 1993, and he had an extended version of his report I put up on YouTube. So that'll be my pick of the week, a look back at the great superstorm of March 12th, 13th, 1993. All right, Jen, go. Give us a good pick.
All righty. So we wrapped up our Chasing Tornado History Tour. We ended up going to 25 places in a week, and it was absolutely amazing. And so my pick of the week is for folks to Google your library and your history center and go to your local library and history center and support them, because they are absolutely amazing. They were so helpful, so friendly. We were able to get some great information. We interviewed a lot of folks. We were very overwhelmed with what we found last week. We ended up going to places along 7 different tracks for the super outbreak of 1974. And that was just the beginning of it. And probably one of the takeaways was just the emotion that's still there 50 years later with folks. That, you know, you have events like this. It doesn't matter if it happened a month ago or if it happened 50 years ago. It is just absolutely heartbreaking, and it stays with you for the rest of your life. So please support your local history center and library, because they are just a wealth of information, and they need your help and support.
So tell us about meeting John Gordon, Jen. That had to be fun.
He's a hoot. I'm telling you what, he is so energetic and so wonderful. They had so much information to share, and stories and advice, and so they will make their way into our Louisville update for sure. But he was great, and I know he's been on the show before. I think we should have him back and have him talk about his life and his story. He's amazing.
If all things go well, I hope I'll be in Louisville next week with my Alabama Crimson Tide. So maybe I'll get to see him while we're up there.
All right. So let's go to Rick Smith. Rick, what you got for us this week?
Well, if you look up Weather Passion, John Gordon's picture is right there beside it. Can't get any more passionate than that. He's awesome. My pick is a relatively new site. The Storm Prediction Center is looking at new ways to visualize their data. So they have a page now where you can look at their day 1 through 8 convective outlooks in a variety of different map backgrounds. You know, the one you get on the SPC side is just that national map, but you can go to the national view, CWA view, you can look at states, you can look at FEMA regions, you can look at Weather Service regions. So my pick is just a kind of a one-stop shop where you can get some kind of localized graphics for the SPC outlooks. They're really, really nice on social media. It makes it a little bit easier to see those areas than just their typical the typical SPC website.
Yeah, somebody gets an attaboy for doing that. I don't know who did that, but boy, that is extremely helpful. And that's a great reference. So again, we'll put the links up on weatherbrains.com. All right, Neil, what you got for us this week? Go.
So my pick of the week, I guess so James Lewis' question got me thinking about, maybe we should run these models on extratropical storms, because they do sometimes, but not necessarily operationally. But then I realized all the UFS code is on GitHub. So the coastal modeling app through the Office of Coast Survey. My pick of the week is the link. It's all the code, how to compile it, how to run it. And you can run it on anything from, nor'easter to lake effect surge to, your swimming pool in your neighborhood.
That's outstanding. This is think about how cool the technology has brought us to this where you can do that. That's just astounding to me. That's awesome. So we'll put a link to that GitHub code up on weatherbrains.com. All right, Kim, go. What you got for us?
So my pick of the week is a graphic that has been going around some circles on social media. Some of this stuff comes up every so often. A forecast office will go to make a weather story. They use some mapping software. They add a lot of features to the map and it generates discussion. This map happened to be something that was trying to convey the arrival time for winter weather conditions in the Boston area, or well, I guess Boston and areas west. And it's just a very detailed map. I think I appreciate that there was some discussion from some corners of the internet, some slightly more curmudgeonly corners of social media, where they ask the question, well, weren't the social scientists supposed to fix this? And I am just here to tell you that social scientists are not employed in every National Weather Service forecast office. There is no training for forecasters about standardizing their graphics. There aren't any best practices or principles that have been implemented by the National Weather Service. There is pretty well nothing. And these things don't go through some sort of approval. You know, you can put out whatever communication messages you want from the forecast office level. It doesn't go through some layer of approval of some magical social science unit that exists in the Weather Service. We have in the Weather Service right now, like 3 social scientists total. So yeah, there's just not a lot. And I will say the recommendations are out there. There are cartographic best practices. And if we are interested in pursuing it, then it's something we're just going to have to do a little bit more to change. It's not something that just changes by the snap of a finger and, oh, social scientists figured it out. They figured out how to do it. Okay, great. The knowledge has to be put into the right training and the right templates and all of that within our system. So if you are interested in learning more, then I have great resources I can pass along to on creating graphics, but also just work to embrace the social scientists as they're coming up and make more positions for them to have things like this. And I think then we will get the issue resolved.
Yeah, outstanding. Great. Kim, thanks so much. All right, Troy, go. What you got?
Well, I was going to mention something real quickly that James talked about earlier as part of the Supercell movie, and that was the College of DuPage. And they're great weather site. And I have to mention, I think Gilbert, Paul, people up there, they have been rebuilding the site. They've been doing a lot of upgrades to the site of late, and a lot of things have been down, but they're really doing a fantastic job. So I'll really mention what a great site it is. My pick of the week is, of course, the National Surface Map, which is updated every hour, which I really like. But big hats off tonight and pick of the week for the College of DuPage.
Yeah, I had a chance to visit their campus a few years back and had a great time. And again, that is a great site. I use it extensively, and that's a great pick. All right, Bill Murray, go give us something.
Yeah, James, I was excited to see Director Ken Graham's release of the National Weather Service Strategic Plan for 2022 through 2023 through 2033, an actionable document full of goals and things, and he is, of course, requesting input and engagement with that. And of course, we're all big Ken Graham fans around here, so that's going to be my pick of the week. James, I'm really excited about some of the shows coming up next week. Jen Walton from Girls Who Chase will join us on Monday night, the 20th. The 27th, Dr. Jana Hauser is going to join us. Kim, make sure you get accolades for putting that show together. The following week, on April the 3rd, Rick has got the great OU Mets who did the live coverage on from the university there on the 20th of February. We're going to have a lot of fun talking to them. Wayne Neely, expert on hurricanes from the Bahamas, is going to join us on the 10th. And author Jim Minnick is going to come and talk about his new book, Without Warning, on April the 17th. And I think Diana Francis is going to be a really outstanding guest on April the 24th. She's in Dubai, and I think she's going to stay up late or get up early. One or the other has to be one or the other to talk about dust storms. And she's gotten a lot of international press lately about some of her stuff. So, James, that's just some of the great shows that are coming up. Just added Dr. Brian Jewett talking about long track tornadoes on May 1st. And Danae Carlos, head of the NSSL, is going to join us on the 8th. So we got a lot of fabulous shows coming up.
We got the greatest guest booking officer in the weather universe right here. That man you're looking at in the World News Tonight headquarters. That's awesome. We should mention, got a couple of conferences. The Mississippi State Symposium is coming up, not this weekend, but the next one. And the same weekend, this is the 24th, 25th, would be the Central Iowa Severe Storms Conference. And last year I was in Starkville. This year I'm going up to Iowa for that one. So I'll be there. Look forward to seeing a lot of WeatherBrains folks there. But having said all that, we got to put a bow on this show here. If you're new here, we typically do the show Monday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. And some watch live on our YouTube channel, WeatherBrains on YouTube. But most of you listen, we know that. So thanks for watching and or listening. If you would like to get in touch with us, the email address here, it is email@weatherbrains.com. So thanks. On behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank y'all.
Very
That was
good.
good.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
show. Good show. It was fun. Thanks, everybody.
Good job.
Have a great week.
Yeah.
Bye.